here with Angelina Ireland and Kathy Matuziak-Costa. We're actually here at the Delta Hospice Society all together. Kathy and myself are doing presentations around BC for the next few days. And so we joined with Angelina for this update. So I'm giving an overview for you, and there's something that happened just recently. As you know, Bill C-314 was defeated. And so that does, change things a little bit. But the fact of it is I had great hope with Bill C-314. I'm going to go into this in a minute, but I'm going to give us first of all a bit of an overview. So while people are joining us, some of the stuff in the beginning is not overly exciting, so they won't have missed anything. So my name is Alex Schadenberg. Again, I'm the Executive Director of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. So we oppose euthanasia, which, as you know, in Canada is called MAID. People always say to me, Alex, we're not talking about euthanasia, we're talking about MAID. Well, what is MAID? MAID is a form of homicide, which is euthanasia, because it's an act of killing another person. It's done by lethal injection, lethal drugs. Assisted suicide is an act of prescribing or providing lethal drugs to a person upon request. In Canada, it's almost all euthanasia, even though both of them are legal. Euthanasia was legalized by creating an exception in the criminal code. So I know that we're being told there's a right to die, a right to MAID, but in fact, in Canada, there's an exception in the criminal code, and that's how we legalize this. The law gives physicians and nurse practitioners the right of law to cause your death or to kill you. So why do people ask for euthanasia? I think this is the essential question, and all the other information really revolves around this question here. So there are some radical autonomists. There's quite a few of them. They like to play on their death parties. They're saying it's my body, my choice. They want this planned death and everything. But in fact, they're a minority. They're not the majority. Certainly they're vocal, they're loud, but they are a minority. Most people ask for euthanasia. Why? Because they're going through a difficult physical or psychological condition. They're feeling depressed, lonely, experiencing feelings of hopelessness. They believe that their life has lost meaning, purpose, or value. Legalizing euthanasia, in our opinion, is not about freedom, but it's about abandoning people at their time of need. It's abandonment. So Canada legalized euthanasia and assisted suicide in June of 2016. We have to put this in perspective because it's really not that much more than 7 years. And yet what's happened in Canada? Well, in March of 2021, we passed Bill C-7. What did Bill C-7 do? And you see, I'm going through this quickly because this is old news, but nonetheless, Bill C-7 created a two-track law. So therefore, people who were deemed to be terminally ill, which means their natural death is deemed to be reasonably foreseeable, which is an undefined phrase. Nonetheless, they can have the same-day death, whereas people who are deemed not to be terminally ill, so they have chronic conditions, they have a 90-day waiting period. So this explains to you right off the bat that those with mental illness who would be in the future approved for MAID, for euthanasia, and therefore they're deemed not to be terminally ill, they would have a 90-day waiting period. It also eliminated the requirement that a person be competent at the time of death. So if you were previously approved for euthanasia, you could then be killed even if you became incompetent. And it also legalized euthanasia for mental illness alone, which is what we've been discussing in the last few months with the Bill C-314, because Bill C-314 tried to reverse that, okay? So according to Health Canada, now remember our data, we don't have complete data because Health Canada is very slow in producing data. And I don't know why they're so slow, because they have the data. But anyway, according to Health Canada, the 2021 euthanasia data indicated there was 10,064 reported assisted deaths in 2021, which was up from 7,595. We predict that there's approximately 13,200 in 2022. Now, where do I get those numbers from? Well, we know the British Columbia numbers. In British Columbia, there was 2,515 reported euthanasia deaths in 2022, which was up by 24% over 2021. Alberta had a 40% increase. They had 836 in 2022, which was up from their 594. The Chief Coroner in Ontario pointed out there was 3,934 euthanasia deaths in Ontario, which was up from 3,102. So you can see the numbers right there. And just to give you the data, since legalization, from legalization to December 31st, 2022 in Ontario. Now, Ontario, I have all the data. That's why I'm reporting on that way. They had 13,726 euthanasia deaths. 3 were assisted suicide. So you can see how they're almost all assisted suicide deaths. Quebec had 4,810 euthanasia deaths in 2022, which was up by 55% over the previous year. And it was 6.1% of all deaths, which is the highest euthanasia rate in the world. The Netherlands euthanasia rate in 2022 was 5.1%. So if you look at it, in fact, Canada has bought into this sadly hook, line, and sinker. And you see that Quebec has got the highest rate in the world. British Columbia's got the second highest rate in the world at 5.5%. And in fact, the area around Vancouver Island is certainly much higher than Quebec for that district, that Vancouver Island area, possibly the highest rate in the world for a region. In August 2016, Candace Lewis, she was 25. She was born with multiple disabilities, was pressured by a doctor to ask for an assisted death. Now, why is this story so important to me? It's because we had just legalized in June of 2016. So you see how quick you get this sort of acceptance of euthanasia in Canada, because the doctor said that he supported an assisted death and he wanted to help her. Think about that. He wanted to help her. This is just soon after legalization. The doctor was told that they weren't interested. The family wasn't interested. Candace wasn't interested. The doctor told her mother that she was selfish and challenged Candace by saying, "Do you know how sick you are?" You have to put this in perspective again. This was only a few months after legalization, and you see this selling of euthanasia coming very quick. Roger Foley. This was a case in 2018 that came out because Roger Foley was in the hospital in London, Ontario, which is where I'm from. He has cerebral ataxia. He has a disability to the point where he needs 24-hour care. He was not leaving the hospital because the province of Ontario had refused to provide him, refused to approve him for the self-directed care program. So what that means is that because Roger had some very bad experiences with his caregivers, he had asked the province of Ontario to approve him for a program that did exist, which does exist, called self-directed care, meaning that Roger would hire his own caregivers. And the province turned him down, so he said, then I'm not going to leave the hospital. So then the hospital came and said to him, well, Roger, you've got two choices. You can pay $1,500 a day, or you can die by euthanasia. Those are the two choices they gave him. He chose neither. He's still in a lawsuit with the hospital because they're trying to get that money off of him for the time he spent in the hospital. But of course, he doesn't have it. These cases, 51-year-old woman, this was in February of 2022, 51-year-old woman in Ontario died by euthanasia because she had multiple chemical sensitivities. Now, this is an interesting story because the euthanasia lobby have picked up on this one, saying this woman actually thanked the euthanasia doctor for doing the euthanasia. She was happy that it was approved and she thanked her. But I'm not suggesting this woman didn't have suicidal ideation. I'm not suggesting that this woman wasn't asking to die. I'm recognizing that why would you approve her for multiple chemical sensitivities? Because the treatment for multiple chemical sensitivities is a clean place to live. She had a treatment option, which was a realistic treatment option, but in fact, she died by euthanasia. So that's the greater question. And after she died, then we had the story of the 31-year-old woman with multiple chemical sensitivities who was also approved for euthanasia, but in her case, she received help through a GoFundMe page, and she's chosen to live. This is a British Columbia story of Joan Rowaway. Her family was threatened by the BC Health Authority to have Joan taken away from them. So Joan had cancer, and the oncologist had said that there was no more treatment available for Joan, that her cancer had progressed to the point where there's nothing more they could do. And in that conversation, Joan and the oncologist discussed medical aid in dying as an option. Joan was very clear. She never actually asked for medical aid in dying, but the doctor had approved her. So now you have the BC Health Authority calling the family. And Joan here is living with her daughter and son-in-law. She's living in their home. They're caring for her as she's dying. And so what happens is they call her up, say, we're coming to get Joan because we've scheduled her maid. We're coming to get your mother. And they were like, no, my mother doesn't believe in euthanasia. So they were threatening the family, saying that they were denying Joan her right to die. Think about it. They sent two people to the house, two health authority people to the house to come get Joan. and the family refused to let Joan go. And then finally, the BC Health Authority sent a representative who was a little bit more, how would you say, willing to talk to Joan, and then asked Joan if she wanted medical aid in dying, and Joan said no. But could you imagine someone coming to your house to get your mother in British Columbia? In Abbotsford, BC, that Donna, in February 25th of 2020, was diagnosed with a concussion after a car accident. And so this was also a bit of a COVID story in the fact that with the COVID restrictions, Donna was unable to get effective treatment for her concussion. And she had a lot of, headaches, pain, etc., which we know is related to concussions. And she ended up dying by euthanasia on October 29th, 2021. And the daughters here were very upset. They could not believe that their mother was approved for euthanasia. They just couldn't believe it. They thought, this is ridiculous. She was denied effective treatment for what she needed. Obviously, she was going through pain and suffering, but instead of providing her the treatment that she needed to get over her concussion, or at least have, how would you say, some improvement, instead they approved her for euthanasia. The daughters had complained to the police. There was a police investigation and everything. And what ended up happening is the police said that nothing wrong had happened. But, it's all based on the language of the law. People have to understand the problem with our law is the law says that the doctors and nurse practitioners only have to be of the opinion if fit to criteria of the law. So obviously speaking, it didn't matter that Donna's death was a ridiculous situation. I think all these deaths are ridiculous anyway. It's not my point. But her death was specifically ridiculous for approving her for this situation. The reality is the law is ridiculous because the doctor only had to be of the opinion she fit the criteria of the law. So obviously speaking, there was nothing that the police could do. While this is Amir Farsu, he's in Ontario. He was living in St. Catharines, and he had requested and was approved for euthanasia out of fear of homelessness. So he was living in an apartment that was that had been sold. The apartment building had been sold. The building he was living in was sold and was going to be renovated. And he was told he had to leave, but he could not find a place that he could afford to live. Now, a GoFundMe page actually raised money for him, and he was actually able to, funny enough, stay in the same building. He actually moved to a different apartment in the same building. There was the case of the 23-year-old man who was approved for euthanasia based on diabetes in Ontario. You might remember that case. That was the case of Keanu. And Keanu's mother saved his life because she was shocked. She was absolutely shocked that her son, who was 23 and a diabetic, was approved for euthanasia. So she went to the media, she went to the Ministry of Health, she started a big campaign, and she named the doctor who had approved her son and was going to do the euthanasia at the Maid House in Toronto. Maid House is the euthanasia clinic in Toronto. And by doing so, by naming him and making such a big deal about it, he decided not to do the euthanasia death. So, sometimes the mother can make a difference by being angry. While the Veterans Affairs story, there was a Veterans Affairs worker who told a Canadian soldier with PTSD that he should be considering euthanasia. On top of it, you remember this story because what happened is that our Veterans Affairs Minister, Lawrence McCauley, he told the media that it was just a bad case. It was a one-off. It was a worker who went rogue a bit. And of course, then you have situations of other people coming forward and a bit of an investigation going on, and other people came forward saying that the same thing happened to them. We know that there was at least 6 cases minimum of people who were told to consider euthanasia. We know that there's at least 2 soldiers with PTSD who died by euthanasia. And then they thought it was going to settle down until Christine Gauthier made a comment about how she, who was also became disabled as a military, she was in the military, she became disabled as a soldier. She then later became a Paralympic athlete. She was seeking a wheelchair lift. Now, does that seem unreasonable that she's seeking a wheelchair lift or help with a wheelchair lift, considering that she's served our country, etc.? And she was told, "Madam, if you are really so desperate, we can give you medical assistance in dying now." Now, that might be just, once again, a rogue employee, but think of the mentality of where we are in Canada with these stories. Alan Nichols, Chilliwack story here in BC. Alan Nichols died in August of 2019. In July of 2019, Alan Nichols was brought by the police to the Chilliwack Hospital based on mental health concerns. So he was brought to the hospital to protect himself. While in the hospital, Alan asked for and was approved for MAID, for euthanasia. His family was informed only 3 days before he died that he had been approved and he was going to be dying with euthanasia. And they were shocked because Alan had gone through, this deep, dark times many times in his life. This was not his first time of going through suicidal ideation. What happened is they begged the doctors to reassess him. Instead, they killed him. This is before euthanasia for mental illness was approved. So that's another important thing about it. And of course, the family was all upset because the doctors lied on his death certificate because they were trying to find a reason to, how would you say, make it sound like Alan had a reason to die other than just being depressed. And then we have the recent story of Catherine Mentler. In June of 2023, Catherine was experiencing suicidal ideation. She went to Vancouver General Hospital for help. She was told by a counselor that there was no available beds and that the earliest she could talk to a psychiatrist was November. June to November. I think that's like 5 months or something. Shows you that we have a great system for mental health care in Canada and certainly in Vancouver. An excellent system that makes somebody wait that long to see a specialist. She was then asked if she had ever considered medical assistance in dying. Think about it. She's coming to the hospital because she's experiencing suicidal ideation. She's looking for help, and they're asking her if she's considered medical assistance in dying. What makes it even worse is that the counselor also told her of another person who had recently come to the hospital seeking help, and that person ended up dying by drowning. And the counselor said that she was really, really relieved when she heard this person had died of drowning because there, like in the case of Catherine, there wasn't treatment for her. And if you start thinking about this whole idea, this is a woman going through suicidal ideation being told this. It shows you the depravity of where we're at in some ways. Euthanasia for mental illness is what we've been debating recently, and sadly, Bill C-314 was defeated, but there is good news about that, but I'll get on first. Euthanasia for mental illness creates a question around killing someone who is treatable and has questionable ability to consent. First of all this medical aid in dying euthanasia is really, really a terrible thing that's going on in our country. It's really a bad idea. Killing anybody by medical means like this is just really a terrible idea. But then when we add it to mental illness, then the whole reasoning behind why we originally legalized it, to eliminate the suffering of the dying person. And that's how it was sold to Canadians. Remember, all the news, all the news stories that we heard of people who were nearing death and who were suffering, and how we needed to legalize euthanasia because we needed these people to be able to receive some, relief from their suffering. And now you have medical aid in dying for people with mental illness. Psychiatrist Sonia Gain testified that it is impossible to predict whether mental illness conditions are irremediable. Dr. John Mayer said, allowing medical assistance in dying solely because of a mental illness doesn't take into account that those suffering from a severe mental illness may not be capable of making the best decisions for themselves. Well, I think that's pretty obvious. He says you're also assisting someone in the completion of their suicide. That doctor becomes like a sanitized gun. Dr. John Mayer is actually quite an important psychiatrist. Also, Sonia Gain is also very important. Dr. John Mayer is in Barrie, Ontario. His whole practice, he focuses on difficult cases. So his whole practice is around people who might be considered, reasonable people for having medical aid in dying, because they're difficult cases that he takes. And yet he's making it very clear that this is absolutely a crazy idea. The Honorable Ed Fast introduced Private Members Bill 314. It would have prohibited euthanasia for mental illness by amending the criminal code. It would have amended Bill C-7's legalizing of that. There were other problems with this situation. The bill was perfect, but remember, it was the Canadian Senate that actually gave us the amendment to Bill C-7 originally to allow euthanasia for mental illness. So even if Bill C-314 had passed, it would still have had to gone through the Senate. I'm not saying that that was an impossible task, but you know what I'm getting to. There was still another hurdle. Nonetheless, the bill was defeated 167 to 150. Now, what was important about this bill is we see a crack in the Liberal Party whip. 8 Liberal members of Parliament voted with Bill C-314, so they voted against their party. Every Conservative, every NDP, and every Green member of Parliament, I know there's only 2 Greens, but anyway, they all voted for Bill C-314. Every bloc voted against it, and almost every Liberal voted against it, which of course added up to 167. But I think Ed Fast did a fabulous job with this bill. It was perfectly worded, perfectly designed, and politically speaking, he did everything he could. So now the Parliamentary Committee made, while examining euthanasia for mature minors, heard from the Quebec College of Physicians that infant euthanasia should be permitted. So this is a future topic also. I refer to this whole thing around life unworthy of life. Why? Because the concept of consent is totally out the window when you're talking about euthanasia minors. And yes, all of this has got overtones of repeating history, and maybe we shouldn't go there because people say don't talk about that. I'll just say to you, this is very eugenic. That what this whole topic of what we're talking about here, euthanasia, mature minors, euthanasia, people who have a mental illness, euthanasia, people who have become incompetent. This is all eugenic, okay? It's about eliminating certain people. The Parliamentary Committee supported euthanasia for, this was our February 15th report, supported euthanasia for mature minors and euthanasia by advanced request. And I make it very clear that both of these issues change the whole nature of the concept of consent. The whole concept of consent. See, they legalize it by telling us this would be for adults who are capable of consenting, who are suffering and nearing death, right? This is going to be to make things better for some people, who are going through terrible situations. We were told this, and this was the flag that waved. This is about freedom, choice, and autonomy for the dying and nearing death. And where have we come to? That's long past in our debate. Euthanasia is sold to the cultures enabling personal autonomy and choice. My body, my choice. We're told that it's for people who are suffering and nearing death. We're told that euthanasia is not a form of suicide because the person rationally chooses to die. Is that true? All these points are either philosophically wrong or not usually the case. Why do people ask for euthanasia? This is the essential question, because we have to deal with the people in our lives. How do you prevent the killing? Is by the people in your life, the people who you have contact with. Will we always be successful? No. But will we sometimes be successful? Well, we've already proven many times we've been successful in preventing a death. So most people die by euthanasia because they're going through a difficult health condition, they're feeling depressed and lonely, or experiencing feelings of hopelessness. They believe their life has no meaning, purpose, or value. Fundamentally, this is what it's about. Legalizing euthanasia is not about freedom, it's about abandonment. I call them deaths of despair. Deaths of despair. The culture of abandonment associated with euthanasia can be changed by caring. It is essential that people feel that their life lacks value, purpose, meaning, that they have genuine hope from a significant community. The answer is to care for others and to journey with them in their difficult time of their life. And we can change the world one person at a time. And I think that's why it's important that I'm here with Kathy from Compassionate Community Care and Angelina from the Delta Hospice Society, because this is exactly where we're going with things. We're all affected by the legalization of euthanasia because we are all human. We're all experiencing human feelings and emotions. Cultural loneliness, it affects our health. It affects our quality of life, and it can be a threat to our life. We're focusing on, and actually I'll leave that to Kathy to talk about. The essential question is, we need to be there with people at their time of their life. That's essential. So what's happened in Canada? Well, like the Netherlands and Belgium that first legalized euthanasia in 2002, there is only one line in the sand. So you notice we're talking about euthanasia of minors. We're talking about euthanasia of people. Now the recent articles with the euthanasia for mental illness, you've got these experts now talking about, well, what about people who have addiction problems? Can they be denied euthanasia? And the answer is no, they can't be. So now we're talking about euthanasia for people who are addicted, people with addiction issues, people who are in poverty. Now they won't be approved. So don't get me wrong. I understand that they're not being approved because of poverty. They're not being approved because of homelessness. They're being approved because they have a disability or they have a chronic health condition. But the reason people are asking for it is not because of the chronic health condition. They've often come to grips with that. The reason they're asking for it is because of their poverty, their loneliness, their homelessness. They feel they have no purpose, meaning, or value. I got a call from a person here in British Columbia who called the helpline, and I answered the helpline and everything. And he was going through significant health problems, and he went through his health problems, and it was very upsetting to me what he was experiencing. I was emotionally moved by this conversation with this gentleman. But as the conversation went on, I asked, well, yes, but why do you want a doctor to kill you, because that's what you're actually asking for. And he said, because I have nobody in my life, I have no reason to live. So even in his case, when he was talking about multiple health problems, which really affected me emotionally, when I tried to drill down to the actual reason why he wanted to die, he said, well, I really have no reason to live. I've got nobody in my life. And we have to understand that there's a lot of loneliness in our culture today. And that is my presentation. Now, I'm not going to take time for questions, as we'll do that at the end. I am going to, though, move to the next PowerPoint with Kathy, and she's going to talk about compassionate community care. And then, and I believe my time was actually reasonably good. And I hate it when I talk on and on and on, and they say, can't get rid of that Schadenberg. Anyway, we're going to move on to Kathy.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and letting us have this evening together. So I'm encouraged by Alex's presentation. And I also am encouraged by knowing that there's so many of you that are interested in what's the solution. And so how can we move from here? And so I am the director of the Compassionate Community Care. It is a charity. We're based out of Ontario, but we service all across Canada. And ultimately, we are here to support seniors and vulnerable persons. There we go. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to highlight a little bit about who we are and ultimately how we came to exist, some of our programs and features in terms of our trainings. And I'll highlight some of those throughout our presentation and tell you ultimately how you can be part of the solution. So Compassionate Community Care is a registered charity comprised of healthcare professionals and persons who provide support to vulnerable persons and families during times of illness and crises. And with at CCC, we believe that all human life has equal dignity, and we respect each person, and we believe that every person deserves to be treated with respect and compassion while receiving the care they need and deserve. So whether you are facing a chronic condition, disability, or end-of-life situation, we're here to help. And some of the services we offer is that we help you find answers to the questions about end-of-life concerns. Also, we provide educational materials and support and resources for you. We have a helpline, as Alex mentioned, and it is a 1-800 number. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is answered. So for anyone who has a card, we have business cards and we have magnets. I encourage you to order one. If you don't have one, you can pass it along to others in your community. I tell you this because it is an opportunity to save lives. And I know because we've received many calls on the helpline wherein people have approached a person at a library, community center, even their own building, wherein they find the information, maybe in a religious institution, and they come across and they call us and say, you know, I want to know what you're about. And so ultimately, we're here for them and to help and ensure that people get the care and support they deserve. We also have a non-helpline number, which is listed on the screen. And so some of the things that we want to share with you is how we provide resources. Just this last year, we started an amazing campaign to highlight awareness concerning elder abuse prevention and drawing awareness to it, because we saw, especially over COVID, even before COVID, the rise in elder abuse. And so it's important to draw attention to this very important issue since it affects so many people. And so we participated in hosting a series of seminars, and they focused on we had first 2 nurses, then we had a prominent lawyer, constitutional lawyer, and finally an advocate and senior advocate from Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, who finished off the series with us. And that led us into doing an actual seminar for Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, in which we showcase some of our work and how we help alleviate this and prevent it from happening. So these resources are available online. They're 24 hours a day. You can go to our website, beingwith.org, and hit videos, and you can watch them and review all of those seminars and those trainings and just come to know and appreciate some of this great information, because often people are not aware of it at all. Okay, so some of the areas that we provide support in include patient advocacy, conflict resolution. We provide education, hence these trainings that we offer, and I'll show a little bit about that, share with you that tonight. We also present on issues related to treatment, for example, elder abuse, neglect, etc., and family discussions when it comes to treatment issues, especially. Advocacy is a big component as well of our work. We offer these training programs and guides for visiting people in your community. And ultimately, we help establish and build compassionate community care centers or chapters across the nation for dedicated members, leaders, and volunteers. So what is loneliness and what does that look like? Well, during COVID, we saw that many people were impacted, especially by loneliness. And this can be someone like myself with a family and active life, but also a person who's especially socially or physically isolated. And we saw the rise in isolation and how this led to ultimately loneliness, which then further led to depression, and then ultimately may lead down that path of despair and suicidal ideation. We actually happened to take a survey called Honoring Our Seniors, and we found the results of this survey. We surveyed over 500 Canadians across Canada, and we found that the last few years were very isolating for many, many Canadians. Anyone 55 and up were surveyed, upwards to 95 plus years of age. Many reported back saying that they felt abandoned or cut off from their families, significant communities, loved ones, and friends. Those who said they actually had a fairly positive experience despite COVID and feeling isolation somewhat because of their physical withdrawal, found that they experienced less depression and feelings of despair because they were active. They had active lifestyles, they had connections throughout with their family and loved ones regularly, and they kept in touch with those people. Those people actually paid attention to their situation, checked in on them. There was a wonderful case and example of this where a community of seniors that supported one another would open their blinds in the morning. And that was a signal to the rest of the community that everything was okay. And it was just a very simple message that if those blinds were closed or with the drapes being drawn and they were still closed, that in the morning, that meant someone was not okay. And maybe let's check on that individual. So there would be a knock on the door to make sure that everyone was still taken care of. So very practical, very simple approach, but very effective for that community. And as a community, we see this. This is important to note here that we can do better. Not only that, but we need to do better, especially since COVID. And we know this in the research as well, that out of a US Census Bureau, out of 12.5 million older adults, we see they live in a one-person household. 20% of those 65 and above report that they feel their citizens are lonely, okay? And we see in the research that chronic loneliness can impact older adults' memory, physical well-being, mental health, and life expectancy. More than a third of seniors in the poll said they felt the lack of companionship, and almost 30% said they socialize with friends, family, or neighbors once a week or less. And this is stark and very important comparison because this is another article we just saw this month, Loneliness in Seniors. We find the cure for isolation is actually staying active and being in community. We're hardwired to feel most comfortable when we're connected and sharing, strong emotions and stories, especially about one another, because we disclose certain details about ourselves, and that allows us to grow closer to each other. And despite solitude and things like, modern life, the distractions of modern life, there have been a number of studies that show that being in community and in close contact with one another, it really creates these bonds, these strong connections that makes a huge difference in the communities of those individuals who feel otherwise isolated. And it's not just about mental health. We see that there's a psychological, physical association. Social isolation can lead to loneliness, which can be stressful and setting people up for cardiovascular disease, hypertension, poor sleep, heightened inflammatory conditions, and then stress. And that means the immune system doesn't work as well, and it starts to completely backfire. So that can create autoimmune diseases like diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis. So the experts say that the treatment will become an even bigger issue for healthcare services coming in the future. So what's the solution? The solution is, the best case scenario is to create a supportive social engagement for seniors in neighborhoods. And it's at the grassroots level, literally going over to the next person, to your neighbor, seeing how they are, checking in on the people that are in your community. It's important to also be mindful that it's geographically close. The vicinity versus being a large distance apart plays a big role here. You know, it's very nice to meet virtually like this and in the convenience of our own homes. But you know, the person-to-person connections are preferred. And we see this in the research, we see this in our study as well, and in our survey. And there is a tendency that, you know, if you don't have those connections take root and build meaningful context, people may still experience loneliness. So you need to build on what you have established. You need to grow deeper, you need to get closer and actually be part of a person's life in a very meaningful way. And this is the idea of neighborhood watch. So how does this work in terms of what you can do? Well, you can help on a person-to-person basis. You can be a person to actually replace the culture of abandonment, loneliness, and despair, which many experience, to one that actually cares. Okay. And it's essential that people who feel that their life lacks value or purpose and feel that there's no one there, instead are offered purpose, support, and genuine hope from a significant community. The answer is to care and be with others as they journey through the difficult times of their life. And this is one person at a time. And the visiting happens through you in your community, making a real difference. And I'll show you how that happens. Since we're all human, we can experience these same emotions. This is a wonderful picture of a family relative who happens to just have passed away over a year ago. But this is a wonderful, intimate moment where he's connecting with one of my children. And I love this shot. Why? Because it was a moment in time that we'll always remember. It was captured beautifully. These same moments can happen and be experienced in your own communities when you interact different generations with one another. Cultural loneliness affects our health, it affects our quality of life, and it can be a threat to our life. Since we're focused on visiting the lonely, those who are socially or physically isolated, we need to start within our own communities. We need to go into our own circles, into our family members, you know, actually partake in our lives again, you know, reach out to that person who was maybe not getting a call from us every quarter or every year even. Reach out to them and reconvene those in relationships with loved ones, community members, and neighbors. By being with others, you help protect people from despair. We offer these types of volunteer training programs that give you the tools, the practical know-how, and the experience to know what to do and how to do it, to be successful in visiting, and to give you and provide advice for those who can experience difficulties. Because there will be challenges sometimes when you visit one another. We can help you with those challenges, okay? And so one of the things that I like to draw awareness to is this guide Dr. Kevin Vast wrote in his book, Guide to Loneliness, that ultimately, in order to be truly awakened, we must awaken to each other's needs, including the need for community and interpersonal connections. We have to ask ourselves, what can we do to stem the tide of loneliness? And we know that by growing in our awareness of lonely community members, reaching out to them, you actually help by lightening their load and you alleviate that stress. So by creating these communities of compassion and care, we realize we're meant to be with others. Interconnectedness is essential to the human person. And by journeying with others, your actual real presence, being with one another, caring for them, you are going to affirm a person's purpose for living. You're going to reduce their loneliness and isolation. You'll reduce the chances of depression, and you help them find a way through their actual challenging situations to become an ally in their fear and their suffering. And it's very practical, it's very effective. And I'm just going to highlight very quickly how the training that we offer does this. It's called the Being With Visitors Training Program, through which you gain the confidence to journey with those who are suffering, socially isolated, sick, or dying, to renew their hope and purpose in life. And it's a free training, and it happens regularly on Zoom, or we can schedule a session to come to your community to be with you in person. It's actually 2 sessions, and each session is 2 hours. And over the training, we actually focus on why it's important to visit, why you have to build those, you know, connections in that community and those relationships, that friendship. Why do we visit? Well, we see there's a lack of companionship, right? And it's very common. So what does this do? By creating companionship, create relationship, you reduce loneliness, you reduce isolation. You can also watch out for signs of neglect or abuse. That's why knowing elder abuse, those signs are it's so important. You also provide a sense of belonging and value and help and support. What are our human needs? We cover this as well in our training. There's 4 foundational needs, you know, the physical, the mental, the social, and the spiritual. We cover all of these in great detail. So don't need to take notes tonight, but definitely catch us on the next training so you get all of those tidbits and information. We also share with you how to visit. How is it practical? Meaning, why is it important how to visit, sitting down with someone and knowing what to say? How do you address certain situations, or how do you address perhaps trauma? All of this comes up in our training as well. And then finally, we talk about the My Story, why it matters. Well, I'm going to show you this quick little book, and this is an overview. We provide you both with the materials. There's a training guide, it's a manual, along with the workbook, and it comes fully written up for you with questions that you can fill in the blanks and actually do an interview-like survey about their story, the person you're sitting with, you're spending time with, and you interview them. And this will reduce their depression. It also helps with generativity, that need for older communities to want to impart knowledge and wisdom to the next generation. It's so pivotal and often is overlooked, but this is something that will actually encourage that, so that they want to capture those moments, those essential tidbits. I call them the golden nuggets of wisdom that they want to pass along to the next generation. Also reduces loneliness, creates self-awareness and self-discovery, improves the self-esteem, and removes the social isolation, as well as may draw up some past trauma, which they can ultimately heal from. And that's a wonderful way that you are actually bringing them fully to their purpose as well and heal. Why the My Story matters is because it helps them by recalling their events in their life. You're asking them questions. It's very practical. So it's just like we used to sit down with our neighbors, have a cup of tea, or read a story or talk about events, and just recall their memories, some of their feelings, key topics in their life. They all share their memories, and you can document them. You can actually put them on paper and show them that as a living legacy. It's a form of healing for that person. It improves the cognitive function, and they actually realize they have real importance in the world. It's a practical level, and it allows them to review their life, write their story, and has many benefits. It's a practical, simple, accessible tool for you to use. It's free and it's available. So we encourage you to take part of it. And ultimately, these are the fundamental building blocks. We equip you with the workbook, the training manual, and the sessions. So we also cover how to communicate with persons with disabilities, because it is important to know this as well as advocacy at the doctor's office, because these are topics that will come up and are very important for the elderly population, how to address certain things when it comes to treatment and issues. Some things we also touch on include elder abuse and what are some of the problems when they show up. How do you notice them? Where can you, how do you recognize when there's elder abuse signs? See, these are some of them, but there's so many more. And we highlight all of these in the training. And finally, we do have another training coming up. It happens to be this week. So if you happen to be in the BC area, we have one in person with myself and Alex, as well as an online Zoom option as well. You can register by going to our website, beingwith.org, and clicking on events. And feel free to sign up for our info and newsletter so you can keep up to date with other events that are happening. And because this is so effective, we found a way to expand on the patient advocacy side. And so we offer training on that as well, which is a single session. It's only 2 hours, and that is held regularly as well. It's also free and it's online as well. And you come equipped with the tools that you need to be a good and effective patient advocate. Finally, we took a series of stories of women who are in the London, Ontario area and region where we happen to be located. And we created a special anniversary edition and we published their stories. It's a beautiful record of all of these women's lives and what they led in terms of ministry in their lives. So I encourage you to take a look and feel free to peruse this and actually think of ways that you can adapt this to your own community. It could be a men's collection, it could be both genders, it could be a certain community or parish perhaps, or a certain profession that you work in, that collaboratively you can work on this type of work together and create a legacy piece around those who are involved. These are some of the captured moments from that story and these wonderful memories that these women recalled during capturing their My Stories, or we call Her Story. And this is, a movement that's spreading across Canada. So I'm so excited to share it with you because there's chapters that have started across various cities and regions. And so ultimately, by visiting and being with others who need us most, you are doing the most important work and you're directly involved with the solution. And I just want to mention this quickly. When we went to speak in Ottawa recently, a woman came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes, and she said, "I'm so happy you're telling people, encouraging them to be with one another, especially their their own, meaning their family, their relatives, their parents. Because in those very important moments, she said, I was able to be there for my mother, and no one can ever take that from me. And she said, please continue to urge people to do the same. There's real ways to help, go to meet out with the elderly in their homes, preferably in pairs, opportunities of social interaction, being at community events, start with friendships in your communities, long-term care facilities. Find a great group of dedicated volunteers, do a training together, and join in this particular and amazing work, because it is important. And ultimately remind seniors that they're never alone. We do have a helpline. Again, I urge you to get our business card if you don't have one already, or you share it with others. We received your call just recently from a lady who was very concerned about a friend who was actually registered, signed up for getting euthanasia, and in a very short period of time, within the month. And thankfully, because of the resources we were able to share with her, she was able to let go of that worry and fear. She shared all of those resources with this woman, and she, as I quote, took euthanasia off and put it on the shelf. So she's no longer interested. And that's one of the very many things that we do through our helpline. We help people all the time, and help is just a phone call away. So with that, I'll conclude with our contact information if you want to reach us. We are a charity, so feel free to donate if you want to support us. We do issue tax receipts for all donations, and we are here for you. So encourage you in your work and joining us in our next training. Thank you.
One of those good-looking guys in the picture is me just before the run. That was the year before, though. Anyway, because we did a fundraiser for compassionate community care. I'm going to open up Angelina's presentation, and right here.
Hello, everyone. So nice to see you this evening. And welcome to Alex and Kathy. Welcome to the Delta Hospice Society, to our offices. Welcome to British Columbia. Not the greatest day here, but nonetheless, we're so happy to see you. There's some things I want to discuss with you this evening, to all of you out there. And because, we've crossed a line in this country. All of you know it. And there's something that we need to do about it. Now, you may know me as the Delta Hospice Society president, and you know our story. We're the ones who refuse to kill our patients in our hospice. And for that, the government took our hospice away from us and expropriated $8.5 million. So you see, we have firsthand experience in what is capable out there these days. And so, of course, we're not surprised when bills like C314 don't pass. We're not surprised at all. We're not surprised when people who are poor and homeless, disabled, addicted, mentally ill, depressed, are being euthanized in this country. No, we're not surprised, because basically it happened to us first. So we were the canary in the coal mine, and so now we are here to do something, because what's happening in this country is unacceptable. Everybody in the world knows now about Canada and how we have killed and are prepared to kill the most vulnerable among us. So the Delta Hospice Society is a palliative care organization, but what is that? What is palliative care? You see, it's been undergoing a coercive makeover in the last 6 years, so that apparently palliative care is only if you are next to death. And they want to put a bit of a timeline on it. If you're 3 months out from death, you could have palliative care. Well, in fact, that's not at all what it is. Palliative care helps you to live with whatever you're going through and live well. If you have a serious illness, it can improve your quality of life. It can reduce your symptoms. It can give you even grief support for people who are going through that, and you happen to be one of their loved ones or their friends. Palliative care supports you. It supports your caregivers throughout your illness, from the time of diagnosis to the time of natural death. It includes things like physical comfort, of course, pain relief and nausea, anxiety, depression, difficulty breathing, support. But it also includes psychological and spiritual support. Palliative care is not just when you're 3 minutes to death. No, palliative care kicks in from your diagnosis to your natural end. Now, this one's not moving. Okay, good. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. So palliative care can be delivered by many people. Yes, of course, family doctors, nurses, but also volunteers, caregivers, social workers, and just members of the community. So you can be a palliative care operator. What I must say to you is that palliative care does not include euthanasia. It does not include MAID. It does not include assisted suicide. And euthanasia is not a tool in the palliative care toolbox. And this position is a 50-year medical disciplined position held by every international palliative care organization in the world. It is only in Canada and places like British Columbia where they have tried to basically destroy what palliative care is. Now, in Canada, we actually hold a very esteemed position in terms of palliative care in the world because one of our doctors is the father of palliative care. And he is the expert, and he says that palliative care has been providing medical management to assist and support those who are dying without hastening death or administering lethal doses of drugs. And so what Canadian legislators have termed medical assistance in dying is not part of the practice of palliative care and the recognized international specialty of palliative medicine. So now, we need to ask ourselves some very important questions in this moment. MAID, medical assistance in dying, was actually an amendment to the Criminal Code of Canada, which basically allows the state and agents of the state to kill people. And it's called non-culpable homicide. They then sent it down to the provinces to roll out this killing of Canadian citizens. But before they sent it to the doctors, they sent it to the spin doctors because it had to be sold to the people that it was such a wonderful and enlightened choice for people to participate in. That it was, and if you'll see the propaganda around this particular choice, it usually has, beautiful graphics and lovely music and flowers and butterflies. And how being progressive means that, in fact, you'll participate in the culling of Canadians. But what we have here in a few short years is death by the state, not of those who are dying, but those who are not dying. We now have death by the state of the most vulnerable. It is people like Jordan Peterson, for example, who allows us to recognize and asks the question, do you allow the state that power? Do you trust that the state will use the power that we have given them responsibly? And what we have seen in a very few short years is that, in fact, the state now kills the vulnerable, period. And in fact, every year, those who are eligible to be killed by the state increases to the point now where we not only kill the sick and the old, we kill the disabled, the addicted, the poor, the homeless, those suffering from PTSD, and mature minors. And we can name the names of the murdered. We can start in British Columbia. We have Joan, Donna, Alan, Brandon, Catherine, Florence. We can go on and on of our fallen people. And this lovely woman here, whose husband warns us that the gravely wounded, demented, or elderly are at risk of euthanasia in the healthcare system. Now, the Delta Hospice Society has always truly been the tip of the spear. We were the ones who refused to kill our patients when the state told us that that was expected of us. We were the ones who sacrificed our hospice and sacrificed millions of dollars worth of funding because we would not participate. So we are now the ones who will step up and say that we must protect each other. And the Delta Hospice Society is committed to providing life-affirming resources that promote authentic palliative care model, those from diagnosis of a condition to their natural end. And in doing so, we have started with our Do Not Euthanize Advance Directive. We went to a lawyer and we got one of these prepared for every province in Canada. And it is a legal document that we ask people to take and to sign. Don't bother going to the notary public or your lawyer, because you only need 2 people to witness that for you. And we suggest that they be friends of yours and not family members. And basically what it says is, I will not be euthanized if I end up in any kind of facility. Don't even talk to me about it. We will not allow any facility to unilaterally take away from us our nutrition, our hydration, or our oxygen, so that we die. Because that is what's happened. That is the evidence that we have. Those are the people that we have helped in the healthcare system. People whereby the institution has unilaterally decided to end the person's life. And that is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. And we will do whatever we can to try to protect people from being treated that way. Now that Do Not Euthanize Advance Directive is available to all of our members. So we ask you to go to deltahospicesociety.org and to order it, and we will send it to you. Just tell us, there is a sheet on our website that you can fill out, and we will send it to you whatever province you live in Canada. Fill it out, keep it with your personal papers, so that and send it if you happen to end up in a hospital, in a long-term care facility, to give it to the administrator, so that they know not to come around and give you this option of MAID, because that is what's happening now. It is becoming one of the options that is brought forward, whether or not you're interested. But the most important initiative of the Delta Hospice Society that we have now started is Guardian Angels. Because we realize that people need help, and somebody needs to stand in between the vulnerable and those who are in a facility, and to help to protect them from euthanasia. And Guardian Angels is a volunteer health advocate program. And all those people out there who really want to do something to protect their people, to protect their friends, we ask you to join with us, to partner with us, and we will teach you how to become a guardian angel. The Delta Hospice Society values the sanctity of life, recognizing that every life is a precious gift and every life is always equal value. So we will recruit, we will train, and we will deploy our army of guardian angels to stand in between people and death, premature death, so that they can live well until their natural end. We will help people to access authentic care services and not euthanasia. So we ask you to become a volunteer health advocate. We need many people. We need many different kinds of people, and we need you everywhere. Guardian Angels is a national health advocate program. We have hubs starting in every city in Canada and small community. That is the vision. And that is something that we believe can be achieved, because there are many people in this country who are not okay with the vulnerable being euthanized. And will even take your pets. So please, if you have the ability to join with us, to be on the front lines of a national program, to stand in between the vulnerable people, then we want to hear from you. We will train you, and we will help people to live. So I have one telephone number that I want to share with you. 1-800-232-1589. That is a toll-free number to call Delta Hospice Society. Or you can go to deltahospicesociety.org. You can visit our website, and you can sign up to become an angel, or you can sign up to become somebody who needs an angel. Or if you know somebody who needs an angel, we want to hear from you. Ultimately, our goal is to provide hospice sanctuary. Ultimately, our goal is to provide a place where people can come and be safe in their last days. The government that we currently have will not allow us to do that. So therefore, if you cannot come to us, we will come to you, and we will bring our guardian angels to protect you so that you can live your life until your natural end. So I want to thank you again this evening for taking the time to visit with us. I want to thank Alex, and I want to thank Kathy for coming down here and sharing some time with us, and really giving you some alternatives, really giving you some options so that you don't feel helpless in the face of what's happening in our country. It's with good people like you partnering with us, Community Compassionate Care, the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, and the Delta Hospice Society, that we will, from a grassroots position, change what's happening in this country, repeal Bill C-7, repeal C-14. Bills like that have no place in a compassionate country as ours. And together, working together, we really believe we can do something to stop it. So thank you very much. Alex, you want to say a few words?
So there was a couple questions that came on the chat, and I want to just quickly take a look at that. Someone asked a question about a "Do Not Euthanize Me" card, and we do have that. I don't know if Delta Hospice has it, but Euthanasia Prevention Coalition has those, so you can get those. We're happy to send them out. They're nice and easy to send out, and it's a card that you would put in your wallet, and you can actually, we have it set up so you can sign it with a witness, making it a semi-legal document. The Delta Hospice Society also has a "Do Not Kill Me" power of attorney. So does the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. So either place. There was a question about, can I buy one for a friend who's not a member of Delta Hospice? The answer would be yes. Just like you can buy it from the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition for family or friends, and you would just follow the whole how it gets filled out. I think the Canadian MAID stories, Canadian euthanasia stories, have only one positive effect, and that is that there's other countries that have now decided or have are not legalizing euthanasia because they're reading these stories out of Canada. So the Canadian stories are getting around the world. So, for instance, recently in the island of Jersey, Jersey is part of the UK. That island, it's an island nation that's connected to the UK, and they were debating legalizing, and they have now set that aside for now because they were very upset with all the stories out of Canada. I'll be going to the UK and doing a speaking tour next month, where I'm speaking in the British Parliament. I'll be speaking in Jersey, the Isle of Man, and in Ireland. So Ireland right now has had a committee that's been talking about euthanasia and assisted suicide. So these things are going on worldwide. But the Canadian stories, there's nothing to be proud of, but at least the Canadian stories are causing other countries to think twice about all of this. Has any doctor been convicted of murder? It's impossible to convict a doctor, Lisa Ann. It's impossible because the law says that, see, the law is designed to protect the doctors and nurses who are willing to kill you. So the law says that the doctor or nurse practitioner only has to be of the opinion you fit the criteria of the law. So therefore, if they investigate a questionable death, such as what happened in the case of the Duncan death, or even in the case of Alan Nichols, the doctor only had to say to the authorities asking the question, I was of the opinion they fit the criteria of the law. Well, we're all of the opinion. See, the law was written loose on purpose. For instance, when we talk about how the current law says that if you're terminally ill, you can have a same-day death, but if you're not terminally ill, you have to wait 90 days. Terminal illness is defined by the term that your natural death is reasonably foreseeable, but that's undefined. And it's nothing personal, but I think all of our natural deaths are reasonably foreseeable. You know, none of us are getting out of this life alive. We're all going to die someday. So anyway, you know what I'm getting to. They didn't define, it's an undefined law. If you look at it, it's crazy what Canada did with the law. And if you look through it, they intentionally wrote it that way to expand the law. Any recommendations for written sources for further information, Dale, you can email Alex at info@epcc.ca and I'll send you. You can go to my blog, which is, you can go to the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition website and go to the blog and you'll see that there's well over 5,200 articles there on the topic that have been published. In my town in BC, the person who assesses people for MAID is also the one who delivers it and gets well paid to do so. Why does the government not see the conflict of interest here? Well, the law was actually designed like that, Jill. The law says that the doctor who assesses you is the same doctor who's going to then kill you, is the same doctor who sends in the report. So it's a total closed system. It's a self-reporting closed system. So obviously speaking, it's designed to protect the doctors or nurses who are willing to do the act. And I hate to say this, but it makes a little bit of sense. I'm not suggesting that any of this makes sense, but how they did it makes a little bit of sense because they created an exception in the criminal code. Just as Angelina and I have said to you, they created an exception in the criminal code. So the criminal code still calls it homicide. So when they say, oh, Alex, this isn't killing, this is medical aid in dying. Well, read the criminal code. It's actually creating an exception to homicide. Homicide's killing. So come on, you know, we're not pulling anyone's leg. Anyway, the point of it is that, let's put it this way. On June 16th, 2016, the act was called murder. On June 17th, it was 2016, it was called medical aid in dying. Obviously speaking, doctors were not willing to get involved with killing people unless the law completely protected them. And that's exactly what it did. Yeah, so the law was designed in order to protect doctors who are willing to kill you. It's obvious that's how it is. I'm very sad to say that. Nonetheless, this is where we're at. I don't see any hands up. And it is here, it's 8:14. I know there's one new message here. A friend of mine knows of someone who changed her mind about being euthanized. He supposedly tried refusing the juice, but the doctor and nurse administered anyway. We need to know that story because if there's any way to prove that, that's a very important story. Okay, you know, how do you prove these things becomes the difficulty, right? That's from Lisa Ann. That becomes very difficult to prove unless someone witnessed it. But I think we need to see that story. I'll give you a better story though. We got a call on the helpline and it was in 2021 from a woman. She lived in Mississauga. She has serious health problems and someone had told her to contact Compassionate Community Care. And I was the one who answered the phone. I was the one who ended up talking to her and she had serious health problems. And I believe it was February of 2021. It was something like that because it was before spring had come yet. So the weather wasn't nice and she couldn't get outside. And she was talking about wanting to die. And so we discussed it. And obviously speaking, when someone's calling you in that situation, you do more listening than speaking, right? Because you're listening to someone, you're hearing what they have to say. And at the end of it, I showed a lot of compassion to her, but I basically said to the lady, you know, spring is coming soon. So, you know, why don't you call me back? And soon, you know, soon as the days are going to be a little bit longer, it's going to be a bit warm outside. You might even be able to get outside. I can understand you must feel terrible. You can't get out of your apartment. You got all these health problems. I understand completely. Why don't you just call me in a couple of weeks again, or let's say in a month when spring comes, maybe you'll be feeling a little bit better. So she called and then she called and then she called and then she called. I ended up speaking to this lady at least 5 times. No problem. And then this spring she called because a woman in her apartment building had been approved for euthanasia, had been approved for MAID. And she called saying, you know, how do I talk to this lady? I want to convince her not to die by euthanasia. So this is the same lady who originally called because someone had told her to call us. But anyway, she was saying she wanted to die. And now she's calling because she wants to convince a lady in her apartment building not to die this way. And basically, you know, I told her what I tell everyone. The most effective way I know is to care for someone, is to have a relationship with them. I'm not saying it's the only, I'm not saying it's going to be successful. I'm saying that when we've had success, it's all based on friendship. So for instance, it's based on someone who cares, someone who spends time with them, someone who shows interest, someone who listens to them, somebody who's genuinely concerned. I'm sure Angelina's experienced the same thing in the hospice side. When we care for people, we're not always successful, but we're more often going to be successful than not. But on top of it, it's the same thing that we just recently experienced in London, where the woman who contacted us was a friend of this woman who had already been approved for euthanasia. And she was speaking to me too. She had spoke, and we talked a lot. And I emphasized with that woman the same thing I'm sure that Kathy was saying, you know, be a genuine friend to this person. Truly, truly be a friend of this person. Talk to them, care about them, but be honest and straightforward. Be honest and straightforward. So let's not mince words. Talk about what it is, but at the same time, be truly caring, truly a friend. And I said, that is the best antidote to this sort of stuff. Sadly, a lot of people don't have a friend or don't speak to someone who's willing to be honest and straightforward, but still a friend, you know. I'm not saying that we would, as I say, sadly, these deaths are happening, and there's nothing, you know, good about any of this, but the fact of it is that we have had some success, and we need more people involved in it to be more successful. As for this euthanasia for mental illness, I'm going to say something to you people. We're going to be putting a big push on the provinces, and we're hoping that some of the provinces will say no. Why? Quebec has a different law than the rest of Canada. You probably know that. If you follow the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition stuff, you would have seen that Quebec's got a different law than the rest of Canada. Because this is being dealt with as a healthcare, even though it's not healthcare, it's not healthcare, there's nothing healthcare about it, but that's how it's being dealt with provincially. We can challenge this in certain provinces because the province doesn't have to do it. The province could say that in Alberta or in Saskatchewan, we're not going to do euthanasia for mental illness. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to allow, we're going to regulate it. They can do that. They have the right to do that. That's how our constitution works. Provinces have the power over healthcare. Sadly, with the BC government, I doubt they will help you out on that one. But anyway, but there are provinces who would maybe take up that cause, and that's what we're going to be pushing hard to do. Just repeating, is the Guardian Angels program really needed? People in hospitals in Canada who are you shouldn't be in a hospital if you're someone who has significant health problems. You shouldn't be in a hospital alone. You should have people who are visiting you. There should be somebody who you should have people around you. You should make sure that your family is having people around you. I'm not saying that everybody is terrible. What I am saying, though, that you are treated differently when you've got friends or family or a guardian angel or someone who cares about you. You are treated differently. You also feel personally different when someone's, because remember, when you're going through a difficult health condition, it's normal that you're going to feel really awful. It's normal that you might feel, what is the purpose to my life? That's not a new human feeling. The only difference is now when you express that feeling, someone can kill you. That is the reality here, isn't it? That there's nothing new about these human feelings when we're going through difficult times. The only difference is now when you express it, someone can kill you. How can we support doctors who don't want to euthanize due to freedom of conscience rights? This is a very difficult issue. In Manitoba, doctors are protected. Their conscience rights are protected. The rest of Canada, it's a difficult thing. I know that there's different physicians groups that are working on that. And the fact of it is that there hasn't been a lot of success yet on freedom of conscience rights, but that doesn't mean we should be stopping. We continue the battle. But if Manitoba can do it, maybe Saskatchewan, maybe Alberta, maybe other provinces will also do it. The fact of it is, you're absolutely right. And as I've said before, conscience rights are not only important for the doctor, they're very important for doctors. They're very important for nurses. They're also important for me because I want a doctor who won't kill me. And if Canada keeps going this way, the doctors who aren't willing to kill you or believe that it's wrong to kill you, they're going to leave Canada because they're going to be pressured, and they're going to say, well, I can be a doctor in Louisiana, I can be a doctor in South Carolina. I can be a doctor in Texas. And in all those states, I don't have to kill anybody. Right? My conscience rights are protected there. South Dakota, there's quite a few states where they have conscience rights protected. So they can go there. They can heal and care for sick people. They can be effective physicians, and we will lose them if we don't change what's going on. Because the fact of it is as I say, it's very difficult to be a physician when you're being told you have to do something you believe is absolutely wrong. And we need these doctors in Canada. I don't want I don't want to be at a low time in my life. I don't want you to be at a low time in your life when you're going through really, really major distress and then have a doctor who's willing to kill you. Because we are human beings. That's how it is. Does Anthony want to say anything?
About the next question, or just in
Well,
general?
or any of them, just in
Yeah,
general,
sure,
yeah.
sure, I will. Actually,
Yeah,
I'll sit down, Meg. Thank you so much.
and then
Thank
we-
you,
then
thank
we
you so
can wrap
much,
up.
everyone. We have a lot of information in terms of what goes on in hospitals and long-term care facilities. We consider ourselves to be on the front lines of what's happening right now in Canada. We talk to a number of people, a number of nurses, nurse practitioners. We have people who are telling us that it is not safe for you to go to hospital by yourself. They may, is it okay? If you can even get in to a hospital, we have had clients of ours who have been sent home in Ubers when they go to the hospital and need care. Sent home to different hospitals, sent home in Ubers because they will not be admitted, they will not be accepted. We've had clients of ours whose operations have been bumped. They've been bumped because basically they're old. We have a very good friend who's a nurse, who's not working as a nurse right now because she was fired, who was raised in the Soviet Union. And the things that she says to me, I take to heart, and I believe her. When she said when she grew up in the Soviet Union, they never let their people go to the hospital alone. They never took eyes off their people when they were in facilities. And she said to me very sternly, this is where we are now. You do not let your person go on their own, and you do not take eyes off your loved ones. And we have taken that to heart, and we have created the Guardian Angels program. So what was it? Provide home support. Yes. No, it's not just in the hospital. Our volunteers will visit you in a facility or at home, because lo and behold, you may not be able to get a doctor, but they will make a house call if you want made. So yes, in your home, in a facility, we will be there, because we're not, what we have gone through, what we have experienced in the last 4 years, you may think that we're a little bit drastic, but we deal in reality now. And in doing so, this is what we're saying, and we would like you to take it to heart. And we would like you to protect yourselves with a do not euthanize advance directive. And we would like you to have a guardian angel. We would like you to get in touch with Compassionate Care. We would like you to get in touch with Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, because that is the reality of being a Canadian today. Thanks.
That's great. So we encourage you to keep in touch, and we've shared our contact information. I'm sure we can do that again.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm glad you all joined us. Talk to you again. Hopefully this update was useful for everyone. Thank you.